Have you ever found yourself in a chess position where you have multiple problems that you're trying to deal with all at once and you're just not quite sure how to handle them all? I know I have. And something that I've learned along the way is sometimes there's a single move that can actually solve multiple problems at once. These moves can be pretty tough to find, but they're often very nice, very beautiful looking moves, and they're worth looking for. So in today's quick tip video, I want to share this kind of lesson that I've been learning along the way, which is always look for moves that do two things at once. Maybe the move solves two problems at once or pushes forward kind of two objectives that you have in the position. Or maybe a mix of both. It solves a problem while also pushing forward your objective or your strategy. Keep in mind though that this is totally easier said than done. But I think there are a couple of key ways that we can increase our chances of finding these kinds of moves. And the first one is just deliberately take some time to look. Like when you're scanning and looking at your candidate moves in the position, ask yourself which of these moves are multi-purpose moves. Which of these moves solve multiple problems at once or do two things at once? And the other way that we can increase our chances of finding these moves is to look at examples. And so in this video, I actually have 3 examples from my own games of moves that were pretty tough to find. I actually didn't find them during the games at all, but they were sort of good examples of these multi-purpose moves, and some of them are really nice, especially the last one. I think that seeing these examples could help you to find these sorts of moves in your own games as well. So let's dive in. This first one is a club game. I'm not going to show the whole opening, but in this position, I was already down a pawn and kind of trying to hold things together. We were castled on opposite sides, so I was, I have this pawn storm kind of going on this side of the board. And my opponent, Harry from club, plays here. And as you can see from the arrows, this is putting a lot of pressure on this f-pawn. And I really don't want, the queen to come down and take this pawn because then my king is in a lot of trouble. So what I did is I moved this knight to f6, which blocks the queen from going after this pawn. And that seems like a pretty good move, except then Harry pushed the g-pawn. And this g-pawn, as you can see, is attacking my knight. And so I have 2 problems on the board that I need to deal with. Problem number 1 is, of course, if I leave my knight here, it's going to get captured. And that's a big problem. The knight is under attack. I need to deal with that. But the other problem is this pressure on the f-pawn hasn't gone away. It's still there. And so if I move this knight out of the way, then I'm going to lose my f-pawn. I'm going to be in check and my king is going to be in a lot of danger and I'm going to have to deal with that. But in this position, there is one move that saves the game. It solves both of these problems. So can you find it? Take just a couple of seconds and see if you can find the move. I have a bit of a cold, so I'll take a sip of water while I'm waiting for you to check it out. Okay, now that you've had a chance, first I'll show you the move that I played in the game, which was knight b to d7, because I felt like, well, I really didn't want this queen to be coming down and taking this pawn, so I was just going to go down a piece. I just felt like that was my only chance. But of course, that's not the move. The correct move is knight d5. If you found that, leave a comment and let me know. But this is a beautiful move because it gets the knight out of the way and it also blocks this bishop from putting pressure on this pawn. So this pressure with the queen and the bishop doesn't exist anymore. Like sure, white could capture the knight there and then I could take back with one of these pieces or whatever. But this is one of these examples of a move that solves multiple problems at once, and it would have been the correct move in this game. It's actually kind of neat when you look at it because the knight was over here blocking the queen, and basically we just move it over here so it's blocking the bishop instead. Like instead of blocking one piece, it's blocking the other piece. Just kind of a neat little pattern. So let's take a look at the next example. This was another club game with Phil, and I actually showed this game in a previous video about some really cool knight moves. So that's a little bit of a hint for this one. But anyway, in this position, Phil moved his bishop back here. And so again, there are 2 problems. One of them is a little bit subtle. The obvious problem is that this b-pawn is under attack. The more subtle problem is because of this advanced pawn here that Phil is trying to promote, he's going to bring his bishop down and defend it. And the issue there is I have these rooks attacking this pawn, but once the bishop is defending it, I'm not going to want to capture with one of these rooks and go down the exchange. So is there one move that solves both of these problems? The fact that the bishop is going to be coming down and defending, and the fact that this pawn is under attack. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to find that move. And again, leave a comment if you found it. And once again, I'll show you the move that I played in the game, which was b3. b3 is an okay move. It's not a big problem. But as you can see, it really only solves one issue, right? It only solves one of the two problems that I mentioned. It solves the problem of the b pawn being under attack, but it does nothing about this problem of the bishop coming in and defending this pawn. So instead, the best move is knight d3. And knight d3 is a good move because it defends the b pawn, so it solves that sort of immediate threat. But then also, once the bishop comes in to defend this pawn, we're going to want to use this knight to eventually put pressure on this pawn, because we're totally okay with it if we take the pawn with the knight, because then if Phil wants to trade off the bishop for that knight, then it's fine. And the other thing, as I've indicated here, is that this knight is threatening kind of pretty soon, actually, to go to f4, which is a check on the king. Too many arrows. If it goes to f4, then it's a check on the king, and it's attacking the pawn, so it's a fork. And this would be maybe a pretty nice way to finally get rid of that very powerful pawn. Now, of course, there's still the issue of, this b pawn that has to be handled, but moving the knight in first gives me more options and solves both of those problems in a much nicer way than just pushing b3. So for the last example, I want to show you a game. We're going back in time a little bit. This is a game that I played at a tournament a couple of years ago. I was a few hundred points lower rated at that point, and I've gotten quite a lot better as a chess player since then. But I think the move in this game is just absolutely beautiful. It's a very interesting move. I totally missed it, and you'll see maybe why it was a hard one to find, or maybe you'll find it super easy. Let's find out. In this position, I captured here. And what I'm looking to do, what I'm threatening, as the arrow indicates, is I want to move the rook over to d7, which attacks the queen, and it's also a discovered check on the king. So this is a pretty serious threat that black has to handle, right? And so then black played a move which surprised me, queen d2 with a check. So that queen is delivering a check to my king. And so the problem is at least the problem that I was seeing in the game is that I can't do this discovered check anymore because they're blocking me because of this check. And so it's not necessarily that there are two problems. It's like there's a problem, which is the check on my king, and then there's an objective. There's this discovered check that I really want to exploit to win the queen or win some other material and maybe win the game. And so in the game, the move that I played was king h1. And this is a blunder, but it's only a blunder because it's not the right idea. It's not the move that solves all of the problems. So once again, take a second back in this position. Can you find the move that actually, it pretty much wins the game on the spot? It solves the problem of the check, and it also pushes forward my objective with this discovered check that I want to deliver. So once you've taken a second, maybe you found it. I didn't find it during the game, but the move is rook f2. Rook f2 check, actually. So this is really interesting, and in hindsight, and with kind of some of these hints that I've been dropping, maybe it's not so hard to find, but during the game, it was actually pretty tough because it was hard to kind of separate the fact that, I'm in check and I can solve that, but also while, dealing with this problem over here. But as you can see, it's a beautiful move, right? Because of this check, black can't save the queen. And so I'm going to take the queen with my rook, and I'm gonna win the game at this point. But this is just such a dumb looking square for the rook. Like, first of all, it looks like the queen can just capture. Not only that, but this rook is also attacking my rook and the bishop. So it's like I'm putting the rook on a square where it can be captured by 3 different pieces, and it's not being defended by anything. But because of this discovered check, none of those moves are possible. Black has to deal with the check, and then I just simply pick up the queen, as I said. So I thought this one in particular was pretty nice, and I think this is something really good to remember for your own games. Always look for moves that are multi-purpose, that do 2 things at once, that solve 2 problems, that push forward 2 objectives. And actually, not only when you're playing your games, but when you're analyzing them later, this can be really key and really great for your learning if you look for these moves when you analyze, like, look for moves that you missed, kind of like these 3 examples I just showed you. These are moves that I didn't actually play in my games. I missed them, but then later when I was analyzing, I found them, and they really taught me some important lessons. So I hope this was helpful for you, and thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, definitely hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and I will see you on the next one.